there you have it. Lots of different speakers, lots of perspectives, lots of ground to cover in a relatively short time. I want to take just a few minutes before we go out to the reception, have a drink or two, and the last chance to connect, to just reflect on a few things here. And I actually want to, Haitham, are you still here? Haitham? Where are you? There you are. Come on, get a mic on you. I want to invite you up and give a few thoughts. Haitham runs the New York City hardware startup meetup, and this is something that Nick started in the Bay Area, and it has really spread. And I thought just to get a quick perspective, come on up here, Haitham, to talk a little bit about what you see happening in New York City and even what you're doing personally. Because you had a degree in like surgical robotics or something like that, and
yeah, exactly.
You got into this. So give folks a little bit of background on you.
Okay, well, so thanks a lot for having me here. Like Dale said, I mean, I'm just a guy. I have a mechanical engineering background. I did a PhD in medical robotics. We were, I was building robots that went into people's bodies, sometimes to places that are sort of unpleasant, and other times in different areas like the heart. And so I actually spent some time in Boston doing research in this field, and I had an idea for a startup together with some people, and we started working on it. And actually, it was a little bit tough because this was 2008 in Boston, and we didn't really have a place to work from, so we were sort of sneaking in the lab at night from an academic lab where we weren't supposed to be there, working on something else, and we were taking stuff home and working from there. And actually, there wasn't that much support either for people doing physical product. And so, the startup sort of failed, and I moved to New York, but I had that thought in my head that I had this sort of startup bug, and I was like, right, I'm moving to New York. I want to continue what I'm doing. I want to build something new. I want to, do another startup. And so, I arrived to New York, and sort of the realities of New York kick in, right? Where you go into your apartment and you realize, I actually remember my first room there. If I sort of lied down and stretched, I could actually touch both walls, right? And so I was like, there's not going to be much development going on in this apartment. So the first thing I did going over there was to try and find the maker spaces in New York where I could actually do some of my own sort of hacking or designing, engineering. And so there's a few really cool hacker spaces in New York, NYC Resistor, there's Alpha One Labs, and I went to those places, and they're sort of small little hubs where people sort of talk to each other in nice little communities, but they're quite isolated and sort of small. But that was pretty interesting, and so I visited those places. I then went to some academic centers, and that was interesting as well. But you can't really hang out there, even though there's like lots of smart people and you can talk to people, but you can't really do stuff there. And then finally, I went to these meetups for like product designers and product developers, and I realized that I just wasn't cool enough for those crowds. I mean, these guys, they look good. They wear like colored trousers and nice shoes, and they have canapes at their events. And I was like, wow, this is a bit odd. So I remember, I was sort of having these thoughts. Where can I go? What can I do? And then Nick Pinkston, who's like the chief instigator of all, a lot of hardware-related stuff. He sent me an email, we sort of got connected, and he was like, hey, why don't you just start a hardware startup meetup over there? And I was like, oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, I'll think about doing it. And he was like, no, why don't you do it now? And I was like, oh, okay, so I'll do that now. And so I started up this meetup just to see what happened, just to see who's out there. And what I was amazed at is that in a few days, like a couple of hundred people had signed up, right? Or like 150 people in the first few days. And I was like, wow, this is pretty amazing. Then, we organized the first session. And, we got, like, MakerBot came to tell their story, and LittleBits came to tell their story, and there's, like, 70 people, and I was just, like, my eyes were watering, I was so happy, I was, like, hugging people, this is amazing. This is the community I was trying to find. And, there were engineers there were makers there were product designers there were guys at academic labs, and sort of they were all talking to each other for the first time, right? And this is just absolutely fantastic. And so we kept on growing. We got ourselves a sponsor. Alan Hyman's here from Make Simply. They sort of help makers, productize. And so we got a sponsor. We got a space. Now we have like 120 people that come to these events. And so it's absolutely fantastic, right? And now, it's sort of gone from engineers, entrepreneurs are coming, and even investors are coming, right? And some who have already invested in sort of hardware startups, and others that are just, interested, sort of scared, but thinking about it. And so it's become this sort of great community that's happening over there in New York. So then, of course, it's Maker Faire. So I went there for the first time, 40,000 people. It was like a Madonna concert. I was going there like, this is amazing. I had never even heard of this thing before. And then, something very interesting happened was that the New York City Economic Development Corporation, and I think Allison, who sort of leads their hardware initiative, is in the back. They sort of, have been trying to diversify a little bit how New York, the economic development of New York. So it's not just Wall Street anymore. It's not just media anymore. Hardware has a role in this ecosystem. And so they actually organized a sort of next top maker competition, right? Where they basically had a call for proposals, and they said, this is a competition. We're going to give money to 6 winners, space for them to spend the summer building stuff, with mentorship, and really sort of go from maker to founder, right? That was the sort of intention. And in New York, there's lots of these communities, so a lot of the entrants were sort of designers who were designing furniture, and then there was, guys who were making like really cool CNC skateboard companies, and there was and there's people who, after Hurricane Sandy, they were sort of, okay, how can we convert a car battery into a USB charger so that people can actually charge their mobile phones? And so an incredible amount of very cool entries came out of this competition. And so there's like these 6 winners have been chosen. They're working out of some space. And so anyway, all this is going on. And City College, which is a university there in New York, they suddenly received money from a wealthy donor who was like, yeah, I want to build an incubator, but actually I want it to be an incubator that helps people build physical products, right? And so I'm now the director of that incubator, and the city of New York has given us like $500,000 to build a fab lab, right? So I'm again weeping of joy, right? I'm going out and I'm buying all these things. I'm buying these 3D printers, and not just MakerBots, but I'm buying like 3D system, huge printers to help people prototype. We're going to buy a pick and place machine. We got a CNC mill. We got all sorts of fantastic stuff, and so we're helping a lot of startups actually come and build prototypes, but also product, right? That's the idea, or at least start thinking about that. And I saw PCH have announced their incubator with 30,000 square feet. And I was like, wow, we have 2,000. We sort of already outgrown the space, and we're only about 4 months old. So that's pretty telling of what's going on. We have our first 2 startups that are already trying to raise money. One of them has like 40% of their first round committed. So it's incredible the amount of things that are going on in New York. If I were to sort of tell you guys to try, one thing out of this is, if in your city, go back and go to Meetup and see if you have a hardware startup there, Meetup, because, Nick's been encouraging people from all over the US and outside the US to create meetups there. And it's amazing what actually happens when you create a community like this. I mean, I usually at each session, I have like 3 startups pitch, and sort of one person come and tell their war stories. And I used to like really struggle to try and get these startups to come. Because I just didn't know where they were. And now I have this long list for the next sort of 4 to 5 months of presenters who want to present, right? And so they've just come out of the woodwork. They're not afraid to present. And it's just amazing to see the innovation that's coming out of it. So, go sign up to your local meetup, or create it. If it doesn't exist, then create it. And like me, I mean, I'm sure you're going to be surprised. So yeah, that's
great. And thank you. Thank you for the feedback. Seeing you today and hearing your story makes me think we should do a version of this before Maker Faire New York. What do you think?
I think that's a great idea.
Okay, well, let's work on it, okay? Thank you. Well, just in closing, one of the things that I recall from this, particularly from Bunny's workshop the other day, he said factories are about capabilities, not products. You go in there and say, what can you do? And I think I want to extend that metaphor to really, the maker community is really about capabilities. It isn't just the products or the companies you might have seen in this day and a half, but you've seen a lot of ideas, everything from the materials presentation today to a new language framing around Motate to talking about crowdfunding and lots of different ways of going about this. I feel very fortunate to be part of such a really great community that cares. And as someone said out to me, there's one of the two comments that, this is a community with a soul, and this is a workshop that has a feel to it, and the people care. Another person came out and said, I'm really impressed by how many speakers are here for the whole thing. And I think that's part of it because we're all learning from each other. It isn't just what we have to say or what I have to say. It's how much we can learn. And I particularly like it with Wendell's presentation. It makes me personally happy to think of the arc of you coming to Maker Faire with your wife, seeing those, which are sadly they're starting to look kind of dated, right? Like yearbook photos or something. But you should see one of Tim O'Reilly and me at the first Unix Expo in 1985. We look like we're 13. But that sort of development and growth, and the human side, the stories of people developing, and in a sense, I believe, while we may even compete in various ways, we really are rooting for each other. And I think that's such a great aspect of this. I've been part of the early web, and it had a similar feel, but it disappeared at a certain point once success came. It brought new people with different goals, and to be honest, they didn't have the same soul. So I'm really happy to see what we're able to do over this day and a half. And of course, this is all just a preliminary to a much larger event that we have coming this weekend. And one of the reasons we started doing this workshop was to, in a sense, provide a way for makers to get together, talk shop, learn from each other, and kind of nourish what in terms of ideas and imagination, who you are and what you do. But Maker Faire is exhausting. You'll expend a lot of energy there. And I was thinking to my team the other day that the next copy of Makes is how to make it's a special issue, it's how to make a Tesla coil. And Maker Faire is kind of like a giant Tesla coil itself. It's at once this sort of tremendous release of energy and at the same time recharging the batteries at the same time. So I invite you to those of that are participating in Maker Faire, surely I hope you'll come and continue on part of the whole maker movement and spreading it across the world. Thank you very much for being here. See you on the weekend.